An ordinary shift for a police officer.
This case came in as just another burglary.
This is an offence we have seen quite a lot of.
Can quickly take an extraordinary turn.
It's gone from 0 to 100 in no time at all.
A routine case
Just thought we were picking up someone who's maybe just a bit drunk and disorderly.
can suddenly spiral into a serious incident.
I need to arrest you on suspicion of murder.
The more I dig, the more I find. How big was this case going to get?
He has started a fire, he's done it deliberately and used some kind of fuel to get that fire going.
Sometimes the most minor crimes
It's really important that we get hold of him as quickly as possible and get him off the street.
can crack major cases.
We did have an international manhunt on our hands. Gotcha.
Today on Big Little Crimes. When a bank employee is approached online about opening an account,
Our suspect approached the staff member requesting him to open some bank accounts.
it puts police on the trail of a serial fraudster.
Daniel, are you?
What started as a relatively straightforward investigation turned into a huge, widespread fraud with losses of over £290,000.
But first, when a family gets home to discover their house has been burgled and their car has been stolen,
There was nothing particular at the time that led us to believe it was linked to anything else.
police soon realise this is far from an average break-in.
What had initially started off for us as what could easily just be a one-off burglary had now turned into an international manhunt. My name's Alex Mills. I was an officer with Gwent Police for 35 years before I retired earlier on last year. To be a good detective, you need an open mind, to be inquisitive and be able to think of all of the possible options. Even the smallest little thing that might seem not related can be the thing that actually breaks the case for you.
In Monmouthshire, Gwent police are called out to a report of a house burglary.
It's one of the more rural areas. Addresses there might be targeted because it's a quieter area to be able to get into and out of without being spotted. The householder had returned from holiday and reported that they'd found that the vehicle had been stolen from the driveway of the house. The vehicle was an Audi TT and the house had been broken into and items of property had been removed from the house, which included cash, jewellery, and the Fabergé-style egg. Evidence-wise, because the householder had been away, there wasn't a great deal to look at. There was nothing that led us to believe it was linked to anything else. So you have to start off with an open mind. But it would be fair to say, because of the vehicle and the property involved, that it was likely to be somebody who knew what they were doing.
They treat the case as a one-off break-in. But just 5 days later, the neighbouring police force get a report of a very similar job on the outskirts of Cardiff. This time, thieves have stolen a high-value Volkswagen.
The owner was away. The house was entered. The keys for the vehicle were stolen. The vehicle was stolen from the driveway of the address.
The similarities between the jobs are striking. 2 house burglaries, followed by thefts of luxury cars. But it could still be just a coincidence.
At that point, there wasn't really enough to link between them to say that it was the same person or team involved.
Then something happens that forces the investigation team to think again.
Just a couple of days later, we have a report of a third burglary in the Chepstow area of Gwent. So that's closer to the first offence. The vehicle on this occasion was a Mercedes, again stolen from the driveway of an address, It's again very similar, but on this occasion, the people were actually in at the time that it had happened, which obviously was very distressing. We're aware now that we've got several offences of the same type within a few days of each other. There could be some sort of connection between them, but there could quite easily be two teams of people stealing the vehicles. So at that point, again, you don't want to lead yourself off in the wrong directions.
Car thieves often switch number plates to avoid detection, so tracking their movement could be difficult. Then, the team get a lucky break.
The Audi had been spotted on an automatic number plate recognition camera in the Newport area in Gwent, and we were able to locate the vehicle parked up in an area of Newport. The officers go knocking on doors where the vehicle was parked, looking at who the vehicle belonged to or if anybody had seen that vehicle being parked. And they were actually lucky enough to come across Miles Bishop, who was actually in the back garden of one of the houses visiting somebody there and had parked the vehicle outside that address.
Miles Bishop is a man already known to police.
Although the story he gave was that he'd bought the vehicle, he wasn't able to produce any receipts or information to show any sort of legal purchase of that vehicle. So on that basis, he was arrested. You suddenly get a breakthrough that not only recovers one of the vehicles, which is great for the owner of that vehicle, but also gives us a line then to start looking at who has that person been with, who have they been in contact with, and all the sort of aspects that will open up the case for us.
It's the team's first real lead, but they still don't know if Bishop is connected to the other burglaries.
So our next breakthrough is that one of the other stolen vehicles hits a camera, and that's the Mercedes this time. That again is a swift response by the police, and the vehicle's actually stopped. The vehicle was being driven by someone who gave us a story that they were test driving the vehicle. And so inquiries were done around that, and we were able to find that Miles Bishop was actually linked to that vehicle.
Officers discover Bishop has tried to sell the Mercedes on. It's a huge breakthrough. Bishop is directly linked to at least 2 of the stolen cars, and it seems these burglaries are connected after all.
What started off as a possible just one-off incident is now building with a possibility that these vehicles have been taken by the same team and that there is somebody operating who is going around and targeting these vehicles and doing the offences more than one incident at a time, that we've now got a series.
But there's still one car unaccounted for. So the team can't be certain that Bishop played a part in all 3 offences. Then, the motorway cameras deliver, once again.
The third vehicle was also spotted on a camera while Mr. Bishop was still in custody. The forensic tests that were done on that vehicle when it was recovered actually linked Mr. Bishop forensically to that third vehicle as well. The fingerprints being on the newspaper and the bottle inside the vehicle. So we now had a suspect linked to all 3 vehicles from the 3 burglaries.
With Bishop in custody, the team widen their investigation and start painstakingly trawling through the motorway camera footage.
What we were able to find was another vehicle which travelled into the areas where all 3 offences occurred at exactly the time when they occurred. And that vehicle then travelled back out of that area in convoy with the stolen vehicles. So we were able to identify another vehicle, which led us to a suspect of Robert Coulson.
Coulson is also known to police and has previous convictions for similar offences. And Bishop's phone data shows there's a strong link between the 2 men.
We came across phone messages which showed that they were involved in these offences together, had full knowledge of them, and that they were actually arranging the removal and the exchange of the vehicles with each other.
What originally looked like a one-off burglary is now showing all the hallmarks of an organised criminal gang.
There's a clear line here where people are going out specifically to steal vehicles, knowing that they have somebody ready to receive those vehicles from them, and that person's then moving them on to sell them. So there's a chain involved, there's a team involved, and they've clearly got an organised aspect to this as a group. Initially, when we spoke to Miles Bishop, he was denying any involvement, but these messages changed everything for us because it clearly showed that he was being informed when a vehicle had been stolen, and he was actually going to collect that vehicle and was then looking to move them on. So he was clearly an integral part of what was happening.
With mounting evidence, police now have a strong case against Bishop, Coulson, and 3 other members of the gang.
There was a trial then at Cardiff Crown Court. The defendants were found guilty, and there was going to be a sentencing then, obviously, at the end of that trial. We are congratulating ourselves, and we're thinking, you know, we've got this to trial and we've got a result on this. So yeah, there is a degree of satisfaction that we've got this done now, this is sorted. But nothing could have prepared us for what was actually to come. Miles Bishop absconds from court, doesn't turn up for his sentencing, and he goes on the run.
Just when Alex thought the investigation was over, it's back to the drawing board for the team. In our next case, when a bank employee receives strange messages online.
Contacting a member of bank staff via social media is not the normal procedure. This is obviously a massive red flag.
Officers could never have predicted the scale of criminality it would lead them to uncover.
My name's Ben Hurley. I'm a detective sergeant with the Dedicated Card and Payment Crime Unit.
Ben's team are based in London's financial hub and target high-level fraudsters.
The people we are up against have usually had time to think about how they're going to commit their crimes and try and get away with it. So for me, the best part of policing is the problem solving. It's finding out what's happened, it's getting to the truth, and ultimately it's catching bad guys.
It's 2020, and the Dedicated Card and Payment Crime Unit receive a call from a bank. They're worried about some strange messages one of their employees has started getting.
This all started because the bank employee had posted an image of himself on social media which showed him working for this particular bank. As a result of this post, our suspect approached the staff member via social media, requesting him to open some bank accounts and also sending some images of large bundles of cash as an incentive. So obviously, contacting a member of bank staff via social media is not the normal procedure if you want to open a bank account. This is obviously a massive red flag, and certainly it was suggestive of fraud.
And the messages don't stop there.
Our suspect emailed this bank employee on a private email address using a different name and provided the names and addresses of the individuals who the bank accounts would be opened under, but also provided separate correspondence addresses.
With alarm bells ringing, the member of bank staff reports the messages to his managers, and Ben and his team are brought in to investigate.
So as part of the evidence that we received from the bank, there were 2 utility bills that were provided by the suspect as proof of address for the 2 accounts that he wanted opened. Although they had different names and addresses on the top, they were identical in every other way. They had the same account numbers, the same outstanding balance, the same dates. So that obviously made it pretty clear straight away that they were not genuine.
Using fake documents is already an offence. But Ben soon realises this is just the tip of the iceberg.
They were names and addresses of real people who had had their identity stolen, with our suspect using different correspondence address so he could intercept any correspondence from the bank.
This now looks much more serious. Then, as Ben examines the evidence, he realises the fraudster has made one glaring mistake.
When he contacted the bank employee, he used an email address that was associated to his own Gmail account, which had his personal details associated to it. So we were able to identify him through that. That is something that we don't often find. Criminals are usually better at covering their tracks, but in this particular case, the suspect had used an email address that is associated to his true identity.
And what's more, the email address belongs to a known fraudster, Daniel Adiaye.
We realised that this was likely bigger than it initially appeared due to the fact that this person had been the subject of a previous investigation by us where he was a bank employee at a different bank and while employed with that bank had abused his position for fraudulent gains. We had conducted a lengthy investigation into him previously and convicted him successfully. So to see him out and still committing fraud was a bit of a shock, but also made sense considering he was approaching current bank employees and likely utilising his knowledge of the banking sector to assist in his criminality. So it became apparent pretty quickly that this was far more serious than just an individual trying to open a couple of fake bank accounts. It was key to find him and arrest him as soon as you possibly could to stop him doing this again.
A warrant is issued to arrest Adiaye and search his house. But when they arrive, he's not home.
We still conducted our search and found multiple pieces of evidence against him. We discovered a large amount of bank cards in other people's names that suggested that the two accounts he tried to open with the initial bank employee was just the tip of the iceberg, and he'd done this a number of times and opened dozens of bank accounts in other people's names in order to use them to launder the proceeds of crime.
What Ben initially thought was a member of the public chancing his arm on some fake accounts has turned out to be fraud on an enormous scale. And as officers continue their search, Adiaye returns home.
Daniel, are you? Yeah.
He's immediately arrested.
You're arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to commit fraud. Which room is yours?
My room is in the living room. Yeah, it's the one with the bed in the corner.
It appeared that he was totally unaware that we were there and that we were after him, and I think he was in a bit of a state of shock when we arrested him on his doorstep.
With Adiaye in custody, officers keep looking for evidence relating to fraud. And the more they look, the more they find.
Got the cash and loads of drugs.
We found a large quantity of cash, large quantity of drugs, and dozens of bank cards in other people's names. We believe that Adiaye was defrauding various individuals and companies by various methods, things like mandate fraud, where he would pose as a supplier to a company and provide them with an alleged updated bank account that he had fraudulently opened and had control of for this company to pay an invoice to.
And the extent of his fraudulent activity seems to show no boundaries.
A number of these organisations that were being defrauded were actually charities, and there was even a church as well that was defrauded of a large amount of money. Defrauding victims is one thing, that's something that is unacceptable in my view, but when it comes to charities and even churches, that takes it to a whole new level, and it's something that is absolutely deplorable.
The amount of evidence confirms Ben's worst suspicions. The level of fraud being committed is far greater than it initially seemed.
During the investigation, we were able to evidence fraud against at least 28 separate victims conducted by Daniel Adiadi. He also applied for a bounce-back loan for £50,000 in the name of a company that was not entirely legitimate. This shows that as well as defrauding individual victims and charities, he was also happy to defraud the taxpayer of a huge amount of money. So in total, across these 28 plus victims and the loan that was applied for, Daniel Adiadi was beneficiary of £290,000.
It's a staggering amount of money. But in interview, Adiai denies everything.
He gave the story that all the bank cards that we found were left by various people in his home and his car, which, considering the number of cards that were there, seemed fairly implausible. When it got to court, Adiai pleaded not guilty to the offences. He claimed that it was the bank insider who had approached him and not the other way around. The jury saw straight through his lie.
Daniel Adiai was convicted of fraud by false representation, possessing articles used in fraud, possessing criminal property, and conspiracy to defraud. He was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison.
Getting the guilty verdict was obviously a great relief and a really good feeling. Seeing him receive such a lengthy custodial sentence was very satisfying as well. knowing this is the second time that he'd been convicted and he was receiving an appropriate sentence as a result. So hopefully this sentence will show that he can't keep committing fraud, and we will continue to go after those that do.
Back in southeast Wales, officers investigating an organised crime gang stealing high-end cars to order have managed to get 5 men convicted of the crimes. But just when they thought the investigation was done and dusted, one of the gang members, Miles Bishop, has disappeared and is now on the run.
We didn't have any idea where he was at all. There was nothing to suggest at that point that he'd fled out of the country, so we literally were having to start afresh.
In his absence, Bishop is sentenced to 7 years behind bars. Now, DC Alex Mills needs to find him so he can serve his sentence.
So our initial things would have been our usual inquiries to look at travel and, again, any vehicles linked to him.
Then Alex gets news that makes his job much harder.
Miles Bishop had actually left the country. He had travelled to Istanbul, and he then had possibly travelled on from there to other locations. So we obviously had to expand all of our inquiries to look at things like travel details, his passport, where that had gone, where that might have popped up, anything that we could do to find out where he now was. What had initially started off as what could easily just be a one-off burglary had now turned into an international manhunt.
This makes things a lot more complicated.
We're looking obviously at language issues, different legalities in different countries as to what you can do, what you can't do. It just makes everything more complicated.
Police share Bishop's information with the National Crime Agency and Interpol. Now, all they can do is wait.
Over a period of almost 2 years, we were receiving information that gave us ideas as to where Mr. Bishop might be. We would get locations for phones that he was using, where his phone number was showing up. We'd get financial records that would show where transactions linked to bank accounts to him were being made. We were also aware of people travelling that we thought might be going to meet him, and looking at where they had been in the world that gave us indications that he was actually in Dubai.
Alex may know where he is, but at this stage, there's not much he can do about it. Then he gets a call from the National Crime Agency that changes everything.
He'd actually been detained in Dubai and was in custody there on unrelated matters, and he'd actually been arrested there for frauds and thefts that he'd been doing in Dubai.
Bishop might be in jail, but he's 4,500 miles away in Dubai. And getting him back will be a total nightmare.
With Dubai, there isn't a direct agreement for an extradition, so there is a process that we could have gone through, but it would have taken probably quite a few years. So yeah, it was really frustrating.
But then, there's a development.
We were told that there was every possibility that he was going to be deported from Dubai, and that was when everything had to speed up again.
The race is on.
We knew now that he was likely to leave Dubai, but we had no idea where he would go. And our easiest aspect to look at was a European arrest warrant, because that would at least give us the ability to detain him in any European country that he landed in. Within a couple of weeks of getting the European arrest warrant, Miles Bishop was actually deported from Dubai. We then found out that he'd flown to Moscow and then got a connecting flight from there to Spain. So think that he may well have been trying to throw us off the trail, but he was then detained in Spain on the European arrest warrant. We got notified then through the NCA that he was actually in custody in Spain. That was a great feeling to know that we actually had him. We then had to arrange to go out, and it was actually myself. I was told, as I'd done all the paperwork, to go out and get him. So there was a team of us that travelled out to actually go and collect him from Malaga in Spain. He was quite gutted. I think he didn't realise until that moment that we were sitting on the plane with him that this is over now. When we arrived back in the UK, because he'd been sentenced in his absence, he was basically going straight to court, and he was literally from there sent straight to prison for 7 years.
Bishop was sentenced to 7 years for his part in the burglaries and got an extra 6 months for absconding from court. As for Coulson, he was already serving a 9-year sentence.
Across the whole gang, it was a total of 26 years that was given out to them for the offences. So yeah, that was satisfying for us from that point of view. To look back on that initial break-in and that first report of a vehicle stolen off a driveway, there was no way that we could have told from there that that would then link into several more crimes, to a group of people stealing items and selling them on. And the manhunt at the end of that, there's absolutely no way we could have known just from that simple one first report of my car's been stolen. We've shown that we're able to deal with people who are stealing things, who are breaking into houses, who are causing the pain of those burglaries and thefts, and that we will then chase them, and if necessary, right across the world to bring them to justice.
Next time on Big Little Crimes. When police search the house of a man reported missing, they make a chilling discovery.
They lifted up the top of the freezer and saw what they believed to be a body inside.
Triggering the hunt for a double murderer.
From that very first call of checking on someone's welfare to then one of the most dangerous people that London has ever seen.